Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm Jim Goddard. John, Arizona Mining announced the former Republican House Leader John Boehner as a director along with another individual from Blackstone. What's the strategy behind these appointments?
One always has to wonder why a politician gets appointed to the board of a company. In this case, John Boehner had the rather unenviable job of becoming Speaker of the House of Representatives after the Tea Party helped the Republicans gain the majority in the midterm elections of November 2010. And of course, the Tea Party ended up calling the shots, and the first thing he had to deal with was this showdown over raising the debt ceiling, and we nearly had America pull the plug on itself by not coming up with a deal to raise the debt ceiling and prevent the United States from defaulting. He finally quit in October 2015 when he just couldn't deal with all the demands, the austerity demands of the renamed Tea Party, now called the Freedom Caucus, and he ended up being succeeded by Paul Ryan, who now has an even worse job of coordinating the wishes of Donald Trump with those of the Freedom Caucus, which basically is extorting the rest of the party in terms of getting anything passed. Now, Boehner himself stands as a voice of reason within the Republican Party, and appointing him to Arizona Mining, which is advancing the Hermosa Taylor project, is a way of putting into place somebody who's going to be the political face of the company as this project moves further into the permitting process. At the moment, they're still working on the feasibility study and doing the normal environmental baseline type of work. But having him in there, regardless of what happens on the general political stage, because it's unlikely that we're going to see a complete collapse of the EPA and all permitting hurdles in the United States. Having him there is very critical. The other party, the investment banker, William Mucklow, he's there from Blackstone, which is one of the world's biggest asset managers and private equity parties. And he's there, I suspect, to help the company deal with what will ultimately be a bidding war for ownership of Hermosa Taylor. And the news release kind of emphasizes that this line that this asset is so big and so rich, it will become part of America's strategic future. And having the private equity guy on their investment banker to help them think about dealing with these big companies when they finally come knocking, while having Boehner in there to help with making sure that this thing is going to be something that gets developed. All these are incremental but important steps. And we've already seen South 32 put over $100 million into the company last month. It is probably unlikely that South 32 will be the party that ends up making a bid for Arizona Mining. I would liken South 32 to more like Teck, which put up over $100 million in the early days of Diamond Field's Voisey's Bay discovery, and that eventual battle for control of Voisey's Bay nickel-copper resource was fought between Falconbridge and Inco, with Inco winning that battle. So it's a positive step, and it just reinforces that this is a serious project going forward.
And John, it isn't unusual for politicians to end up in unusual places. Former Canadian Foreign Minister John Baird ended up on the board of Barrick Gold. So this isn't something that we haven't seen before. Now, much has been made of Trump's goal to reduce the role of the Environmental Protection Agency. He also pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. But has any of this made a difference for companies exploring or developing mining projects in the U.S.?
Well, it's ironic that Trump's decision to pull out of the Paris climate deal is probably good for the overall goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and averting the runaway carbon dioxide growth level that will bring the global temperature to a level where really bad things happen. And the reason I say is that the way the deal worked, it wasn't very binding in everything. It was more of a moral suasion system, with China as the biggest polluter and probably the one with the most to lose in reducing its carbon dioxide footprint in terms of sacrifices it needs to make. And with the United States in the role of second largest polluter, always cajoling China, you've got to do more, you've got to do more. Look at our great example. And what this does is it completely changes the dynamics of this relationship. The United States has in effect abdicated its leadership role, and it's given China the opportunity to step into those shoes to do something it has to do anyways, because it knows it has a problem. It knows it will have to do sacrifices to reduce its carbon footprint and deal with pollution in general. It knows it needs to create its own EPA with teeth as part of the environmental awakening to prevent a revolution of people annoyed with all this bad air and water that they have to consume. So they can now go in there and advance all this stuff. And Trump's pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that was also a gift to China, because that was basically everybody ringing the Pacific aligned against China in a something of a trading bloc, with the United States saying, no, we don't want any part of that. All these other countries are now going to turn to China, which is in a great position now to become very aggressive about clean energy technologies and so on, and holding the torch for less pollution in the world and serving as the example for all the other nations. Now, this itself has nothing to do with, the permitting process in the United States. And, but something very subtle has started to happen. And I talked to Stephen Quinn, CEO of Midas Gold recently, which are trying to permit their stibnite project. And he said that not long after Trump was put in charge and it became clear that he was hostile towards the EPA, Midas detected a change in the attitude of the various permitting bodies. And they just put out a news release, which is basically a notice of intent to prepare an environmental impact statement, which will kick off a 45-day comment period where everybody can weigh in about what they're concerned about and so on. This was going to have to happen on multiple tracks involving the EPA, the Forest Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, and it was just going to cost Midas a lot of money and time. But a very unusual thing happened. The EPA decided to communicate with the other branches and said, why don't we coordinate this so it all happens at once, so that this duplication that the company otherwise has to endure is avoided. None of the rules have changed about what it takes to get something permitted, but historically there has been a sort of civil servant attitude that we must obstruct anybody who wants to build a mine by just sort of plodding through our channels. And now there's been a shift in attitude, possibly because they fear for their jobs, but also possibly because they realize that what Trump has set in motion with his plan for protectionism and isolationism is that one way or another, the United States is going to have to become more self-reliant on domestic production of raw materials. And so, like when we were talking earlier about Hermosa Taylor, that has a local community that would be affected by mining the Hermosa Taylor project. In the case of the Stibnite project, which is a gold mine, that's really a reclamation project with a very important strategic metal, antimony, as a byproduct. This is sort of in the middle of a wilderness area where it's not in anybody's backyard. So, but it can still be done in a way where it actually is a win-win for everybody to have this put into production. So this subtle change is starting to happen. It's a rebalancing of the antagonistic attitude towards the mining industry in the United States, and in a sense, it's a pushback against the anti-mining lobby that is simply not in my backyard mentality. And these are people who really don't care about pollution. They just don't want it in their backyard. They want the disturbances elsewhere in a country like China, which has, for the past couple of decades volunteered to be an indirect toilet for the emissions of everybody else for cheap raw materials. And I think that's going to change because with China's new leadership in the whole clean energy and renewables and anti-pollution drive, we're going to see the supply of a lot of raw materials diminish that currently come out of China. So there is a subtle but important shift happening in the United States.
Discovery Watch with John Kaiser will be right back after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineered gold mine in the Atlan District of northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Welcome back to Discovery Watch. John, in early May, Scandium International got a short-lived market boost when New South Wales granted a mining lease for what would be the world's first primary scandium mine. A week ago, the company put out a long news release about signing an EPCM contract, which the market yawned at. Why has the stock gone quiet?
Well, EPCM stands for Engineering, Procurement, and Construction Management. And that is a complete eye-glazing term because it has to do with building a mine, the mechanics of building a mine. Now, management was very pleased with this news release because they understood how many months of hard work it took to negotiate the terms of this contract. And they did this while they were waiting for the mining lease. They were able to do it with the Australian engineering firm that did the definitive feasibility study and knows the project inside out, Lycopodium. So it is a significant development to have this all in place, because when you go out for construction financing, whoever's going to put up the serious capital of $100 million to build a Ningen mine is going to want to know that, we give you the money, things can start happening right away. But the stock has gone quiet because we're in that 30 business day window where the 20% project partner, Scandium Investments LLC, has to make up its mind whether it's going to stay at the project interest level and put up 20% of the capex, which would be about $20 million in addition to the $2.5 million they originally put up, or decide to convert that 20% project interest into a company equity stake, which could be as high as 20% of the resulting shares out. So if they choose the latter, they would end up with somewhere between 50, 60 million shares, maybe less, depends on the negotiations, but they would definitely end up being the largest shareholder in the company. So the company at the moment is not in a good position to do anything about raising the money, because what decision SIL makes will really determine the strategy for funding. Quite likely, Scandium Investments is taking its time right now, exploring all the different ways that this financing can be raised, different structures. Is it going to be all equity? Is it going to be some sort of debt equity combination? And probably feeling out within their network as to what will work for them. The deadline for them making a decision is June 16th, so we will probably not hear until June 19th what decision that we have made and what the financing strategy is going to be for the company. So understandably, the stock has gone soggy and quiet as we kind of wait to see whether the Scandium Investment Group will be a major driving force in the financing or just sit in the background and pony up their $20 million when Scandium International has raised its 80% share, its own $80 million of the capex.
Right after these messages, we'll have more with John Kaiser on Discovery Watch.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome back. John, we've talked about fairly advanced projects. Are there any new discovery-focused juniors worth watching?
Well, I would like to introduce a company called Blind Creek Resources, which I spent a fair bit of time with at the recent International Letter Writers Conference in Vancouver. I should mention that Blind Creek has been a sponsor of Discovery Watch. I was a bit surprised to see that since I had already decided to feature this company, and today is the day where I'm going to introduce it. Now, this company has two projects. They call their flagship project the Blend Deposit, which was discovered back in sort of the 80s. A little company called NDU had it, advanced it. It ended up being taken over. Eventually, the claims lapsed, and in 2002, Eagle Plains, which is the ultimate sort of BC, Yukon, Saskatchewan claim staking entity, noticed it, came open, scooped it, and eventually sold it to Blind Creek Resources. The problem with the Blend Deposit, it's nearly 20 million tons, a historic resource, it's not 43101, is that it's in a remote part of the Yukon. It's not large enough by itself to justify bringing in the infrastructure. However, we have ATAC has spent over $80 million on its Rackla Belt projects. It's got a $10 million program going in there this year. It's got Barrick optioned the Orion segment of that whole chain of claims that they have. So if we can see this area opening up, the Blend Deposit could become interesting. The company's in the midst of doing a $2 million financing of 8 million units at 25 cents with a full 40-cent 1-year warrant. It plans to use some of that money to convert that resource into 43101 compliancy, because it's got a good zinc, lead, combined silver grade, almost 2 ounces of silver, and it's $163 rock. Part of it could be open pit mined, but most of it will probably be underground mined. So this is a zinc optionality play. But when I was in Vancouver, I sat down with the new president, Brian Fowler, and talked about the Engineer Project. The Engineer Project has intrigued me for quite some time. It's located in the northwestern corner of British Columbia in the Atlin area, and it used to be owned by a little junior called BC Gold, of which Brian Fowler was a key principal. And the Engineer mine was found in 1928, and it has these narrow veins, these chutes that are run 1 to 2 ounces gold and has small scale production. And the group that was in charge of BC Gold had too many engineers on board, and they wanted to do a bulk sample and basically mine the pitiful little 40,000 ounces or so that were outlined in that system and turn it into a small-scale cash flow, almost like a mom-and-pop type of operation. And that just never went anymore. But now that that Brian Fowler is in charge of this new company, what happened was the BC Gold ended up being taken over by another group which vended Peruvian group of projects into it and had some financial distress, and Blind Creek happened to have some money and was able to acquire the underlying option for 100% of the project. And Blind Creek has been an obstacle to BC Gold in the past because Blind Creek, which was headed by Frank Callahan, had staked all the surrounding ground to the east and south of the Engineer property. And the Engineer property itself covers the old area of the high-grade veins and what's left of them. But the bigger project has potential for this larger shear-hosted gold. And Brian Fowler's goal was always to, okay, forget about these little high-grade veins. Let's focus on the sort of 4 to 6 gram per ton range, come up with 1 million ounces. And these shears are related to this Llewellyn fault structure that rips through that area and crosses the lake. And they've documented these things. And the shears themselves do not really have any gold mineralization in them, except where they have jogs, where they've been sort of twisted, and we've had sort of cross-cutting veins and stuff like that. And their goal is to explore the long trend extent from the, move away from the original Engineer mine and see if there are these sort of bodies of, 400 meter by 40 meter going down, 300-400 meter segments that could be mined as sort of 4 to 6 gram per ton blocks of rock. And they have room for multiples of them, and part of the money that's raised will go into this. So the new Discovery Watch candidate here is not so much the blend, which is really more an optionality story, but is the rethinking of the old high-grade Engineer system for the possibility that there could be substantially more ounces of a lower grade but still mineable on an underground basis. So Blind Creek Resources and its Engineer project is our new Discovery Watch candidate.
John, thanks a lot for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser, his website, kaiserresearch.com. Discovery Watch will be back next week. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at howestreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.